Hi, I'm Lydia Cornell and my co-host Dr. Darlene Sperlaza. We are so excited to have a special guest on today, Naseem Rochette, who's written an amazing book, and she's here to tell us all about her story. Naseem, welcome to the show and tell us about your book, the title, and we're going to be promoting you nonstop because I've been reading all about you in CBS and Forbes and all over the place. And you were a
Oh,
Google Tech alum and a Microsoft executive, and then something happened to you.
yes. First, thank you so much for having me on. So, I am the author of The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over. And that is literal. 7 years ago, I was hit by a car and run over 3 times. And, I'm going to laugh and giggle throughout telling this story. And it's not funny, but it's so ridiculous, it's funny.
Oh, I
So,
can't wait. Now, first, I also want to have Darlene say a few words because she has something to add to the introduction as well.
And you
Darlene?
know what, Naseem, it was like after reading your story and, learning a little bit about you before you were coming on the show, I thought, what an appropriate day to have you come on. Today being 9/11, 21 years ago, or 24 years ago, sorry. Um, it's just pretty amazing the timing that this is happening in because you have a story to share with people, which is about resilience and coming back from something tragic. And there's so many people in our world suffering today. Those from the 9/11, from all those years ago, still have family and children that have grown up through this. We have gun violence going on a lot. Most recently in Utah, what happened there, just so many things are going on. And it's just, I think it's perfect timing for our audience to hear from somebody that, in your own words, looks at the glass half full, and so, really excited to have you today and excited to hear your story, just as Lydia is, and look forward to helping our audience find a way to get through PTSD, which is real. Being doctorally prepared in nursing, I certainly understand that. And so that's kind of what I wanted to add to the beginning. And now, yeah, let's move on
no,
with what
thank
you
you,
have to say.
Darlene. And, you're so right. Like, these tough moments, and we're facing so many of them. One of the things I feel so lucky to learn, and I'll tell everybody about my journey in a moment, is that the tough moments may always be tough, but if we start to reframe how we think of them, we can also start to appreciate what we've learned from them, how we've grown from them, and, give ourselves a little credit for making it through. Thank the people that we love for helping us through. We actually celebrate the anniversary of the day that I got run over as Unbreakable Day,
Gosh,
and we celebrate it as an anniversary simply to reframe, not that that's the day I almost died, it's the day I survived.
wow, I love that. That is
So,
really, and I
oh,
love something you said. I read your bio, I read the whole Vogue article, and the minute I got the email from AJ, I read everything about you a few weeks ago before we left town. But you said something about being vulnerable was the gift that came out of this, and I can't wait to talk about that.
yeah. So, all right, let me tell you guys what happened. So, I was run over 3 times. So it's a beautiful sunny day, Monday morning. And, at the time I was 47 years old. I had worked really hard to build a life that I was proud of. I was a very, very insecure young girl, really never comfortable in my skin. I didn't look like anybody in my town. I just wanted to be white, and I wasn't. I'm not. And I couldn't accept that I was different. So it took me about 25 years, I'd say, to be comfortable just in my own skin. And then many more years to really build a life that I liked and be proud of myself. And it almost feels boastful saying I was happy and proud of myself. But, I worked hard to achieve that. And we should never be, you know, embarrassed to be happy with who we are. We should be happy with who we are. So on this day, May 21st, 2018, I had achieved that. I was feeling great. I woke up feeling fabulous. I was working at Microsoft at the time, have 3 young kids, 9, 11, and 13. And went to New York City where I worked, had a great day of meetings, came home a little bit early I had a new babysitter starting that day. My son had just broken his arm. My husband was working from home, which, never happens. But so all of these, just wonderful things were going on. And it was such a nice day that I decided not to tell my husband to pick me up from the train station, but to walk a little and enjoy the blue sky and how fabulous a day I was having. And I see my husband across the street, and I cross a first crosswalk. Then I'm in the middle of a second crosswalk, crossing to him. He's just, not even 10 feet away from me when I see a big white SUV turning and coming towards me. Now I'm in the middle of a pedestrian crosswalk. So I yell, and then the car hits me but stops. And I'm still standing. And you know what? I'm thinking, she just hit me. I can't believe I just got hit by a car today. I feel fabulous. I'm having a great day. I'm having a skinny day, and I'm, going out to dinner right now. And I was not worried. It wasn't a big deal. I was worried about being black and blue a little bit, some bruises on my body. But I thought, you know what? It's a good cocktail party story. I got hit by a car today. Ha ha. And then she accelerates and she drives over me. My husband said it was like monster truck. And then she reversed and drove over me again. And, I was screaming, I was wriggling around, my husband was screaming, other witnesses were screaming. And, the first time it happened, I was just trying to get out. The second time she ran over me, I actually started thinking, there's something wrong. This should not be going on. And I could hear in my husband's screams and other people's screams that they were watching me die.
What?
And and everything is in slow motion during these life-changing moments. And for me, so it was, I felt like I could have been down there for 20 minutes under the car. I had so many thoughts about my life, how I lived, you know, did my kids, how would they live without me? And, I'll share actually that a couple of wonderful things came out of that moment, where I did have those end of life thoughts. The first was, there wasn't that much regret. I didn't think, oh, I should have saved more money, or I wish I had, have better career. All I thought about was people. I thought about my kids and do they know how much I love them? And I actually realized, you know what? They do. I don't want to leave them, but we've laughed. We've had so many good times. I've always been a working mom, but when I'm with them, I was present. And we had so much joy. And I thought, I don't want to leave them, but we've had joy and they know who I am. They know how I love them.
Wow.
But then I also thought the kids know, but the other people in my life don't. I didn't tell everybody how great they made me feel or the kind gestures, how they supported me. It just wasn't my habit, you know. And I realized there were some things that I had left unsaid, and that I wished that I had shared with everybody that had a positive impact in my life. I wish they all knew it. So that was a little bit of a regret. And then, so I'm in deep in these thoughts, and then the car goes forward over me again. And so at this point, the car has driven over me 3 times. The tires have gone over me 5 times, over my legs, over my chest, even over my head and neck. There's actually a picture of my neck where you see the tire marks. So the car ran over me again, and then I know, Lydia, it's crazy. It finally stopped. I was pinned underneath the car, and I didn't know if I was going to die. If I could wiggle my fingers. I couldn't. That's when the pain actually started rushing in. And I'll share with you, ladies, because I think this is really funny. So I'm under the car first, not knowing if I'm dying, and then I hear my husband's voice, and then kind of that me that was like that powerhouse juggler that woke up that morning returns, pops her head out and says, honey, grab my purse, get my iPhone. And then I start worrying about my shoes. I'm like, oh, I'm wearing my favorite shoe. Meanwhile, I cannot move my body. My face, I feel like my face is ripped off. And I start thinking, well, these are my favorite heels. Did I lose one? And is my ass showing? Can everybody
Yeah.
see?
Are you wearing underwear? Take
Yes, am I wearing cute underwear? Like,
off.
so all this while I don't even know if I'm paralyzed or not. So I know there's so much ridiculousness that happens too in these life-changing moments. So they finally lift the car off me, take me to the hospital, and miraculously find out that no broken bones. I had no broken
Wow.
bones. You know, they did test after test, and you know the doctors, the nurses, you know they were all just shocked because I was conscious through the accident. I was clear about what happened. The witnesses were clear. Run over 3 times. The tires went over me 5 times. Yet nothing was broken. And I know, you know, I my face was ripped up. You know, I had cartilage falling out of my ear. I had to have some eye surgery, and you know, my body was raw from road rash. So I had, you know, lots of stitches and lots of injuries, but nothing that actually warranted them admitting me to the hospital.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
So 24 hours later, I was back home. I couldn't walk, I couldn't see, I couldn't move, you know, I couldn't think. The tires had run over my head and neck. But I was home. And this is where, you know, everybody in my world wanted to help me and bring me dinners and drive my kids. And, you know, we're sending flowers. And Lydia, I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. You know, I am not somebody that accepted help. I'm somebody that gave the help. And it just felt like a weakness that people thought I needed help. And it felt like a debt in my ledger. You know, at first I was telling the kids, you know, keep track of who's bringing dinner and, you know, take pictures of the flowers because, you know, I'm going to have to send thank you notes. And this is what I'm worried about, you know. Meanwhile, I can't do anything. You know, I can't sit on the couch. I can't walk up the stairs. I can't hold a coffee cup. And um, around this time, a couple of things happened that really helped me reframe how I dealt with the world around me. And one of those things was a tragedy. My brother lost his dog. My brother and I are very close, and when he lost his dog, I wanted to help him. And you know, everybody had wanted to help me. I wanted to help my brother, you know, and you know, it was an instant that I connected those dots, but it did make me realize the accident didn't just happen to me. These tragedies, these complexities, they're not just ours. You know, it happened to my family. It happened to everyone that loved me. It happened to everyone that depended on me. And just like I had to figure out how to heal, they needed to figure out how to heal and move forward. And I needed to I needed to figure out how to let them. The other thing that happened that really helped me in this moment was I learned about the art of Kintsugi, the art and philosophy of Kintsugi, where you take a broken piece of pottery and you put it back together with gold inlay.
Oh, that's right. I read that in
Yeah.
Mhm.
class.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that that really gave me something to latch onto that made me feel like I don't have to be a victim. This is part of my journey. Just because I was run over and I can't do anything and you know I don't have to be a victim. This I can share these tough moments and these challenges I'm facing as part of my journey. And when I do that and I reframe it like that, then I can let people in because I'm not complaining. I'm just sharing these facts.
Let
And
it
what
go.
I
As a
found,
quote,
what?
thing is broken. That's how the light gets in. Or, that's the way.
Oh, yes. Yeah, exactly.
Keep
Yeah.
talking. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, 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 that's but you're spot on, and when you see that, like when you start to let the light in and you share the cracks, I found that everybody's going through something. I mean, maybe they wouldn't run over three times, but they're going through things. There whether it's, illness or lost jobs or, kid challenges, whatever it is, people, are going through things. And nobody's used to sharing, nobody's comfortable sharing. But when you share first, people open up. And then all of a sudden, these relationships, these people I had known for years, at school pickups or soccer sidelines, or neighbors, I realized I never really knew them.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so our relationships got closer. And because we were sharing our challenges, we got to share our victories. I could say, guess what? I held a coffee cup, and they knew what that meant and how much that meant. And that I feel so lucky to have learned.
Wow. That's like
I want
nine.
to ask you a question, if
Yeah.
I can. Because as you're talking about being run over, and as a nurse practitioner who has worked in the emergency room and ran a hospital and had a lot of medical background, did you stop to wonder ever why you didn't have anything broken, how that works?
Oh, I spent a lot of time wondering that. It makes no sense to me. And then there are a few theories. They're all ridiculous, but I'll share them.
Okay.
So one theory is I credit Starbucks. So I, for years, have been drinking a large chai latte, which is lots of milk. So, maybe it was all the calcium, my strong bones. you know. And then I
Okay.
think,
Everybody's going to be running out to get these things now for calcium.
Good ad.
and then I
What was your
wonder,
other one?
with, and actually, so I discussed this. I did have a trauma therapist that I saw. She's actually the one that taught me about Kintsugi. The other thing we talked about was maybe just because I was feeling so fabulous that day, that helped, it doesn't seem logical, but maybe, that helped me. I don't know.
Seems logical to me because I truly believe that particle physics, that quantum physics proves that our thoughts create our reality. And even though I talked with my astrophysicist friend at NASA about this, he goes, no, 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 no. But I extrapolate it from the micro to the macro because your particular point of view, how you judge someone locks them into a solid particle. Particle, particular point of view. I really believe that if what you focus on grows, and they've proven that there's no solid matter in the universe anyway. Down to the tiniest, through an electron microscope, the atom has no solid matter. It's all energy. So when you are happy and you are good to people and you are expressing good, to me that would be what I call good orderly direction, or some call it God, or just love, the force of love in the universe. You are in that spirit of joy, and I really believe that's powerful in the physical universe.
Yeah, I can't explain it, but I do agree so much with what you're saying about energy.
Yeah.
So the last part of my book, I call it the sermon section. And to be honest, I had no intention of writing a book. If I started sharing things that I learned, and if I could have said, "Hey, these are the 10 things that I learned," I probably would have just done that. But I realized, people needed the context of the story and the journey. But in that sermon section, one of my lessons, or one of the things I talk about, is net positive energy, and how we all, it's so simple, but we all react to the energy around us. And, just like the reframing of I'm not a victim, this is my journey, all of that, that creates an energy. And it is sometimes just feels it's so simple, but so powerful when we remember that.
Oh, wow. What are the 10?
Mhm.
You had 10 things in your sermon?
I have 10
Are
lessons.
you
Yeah.
able to tell them? We want people to buy your book, and I'm going to be
I won't tell you all of them, but I'll tell you a couple of them. One of them is actually say you're sorry. So the driver never acknowledged or took responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, she's sitting in the vehicle on top of you, and she doesn't realize she's hit you. I mean, what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, she drove over me a few times. There's, and I held no ill will. Darlene, I do not know, why she did the things she did. I also have theories on that, but I actually held no ill will. We all make mistakes. And I wouldn't say I hold ill will now, but I was really hurt. And I was really, you know, I really struggled with the lack of apology.
Naseem, on that note, really quick, I've seen a lot of the interviews you've done, a few of them, at CBS, and I thought no one asked the question for some reason. And I can wonder, why are they avoiding the question? Why did she do this? Why did she go over you? Was she just nervous? Or was it because you were a darker skin color? I hate to even say that. I don't want to go. But we wonder, I want to at least ask out loud and
Yeah.
let the audience not avoid the question.
Yeah, and it's a good question, and I wish I had an answer to it. I have my theories, and I'll share my theories. So it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and people ask, was it a hit? And no, my husband didn't take a hit out on me. It wasn't on purpose. Uh, but when she hit me and then she accelerated, I believe she was trying to leave the scene because she really didn't have car insurance.
Oh,
So, that's why I think she initially, accelerated. I think that she reversed to get back down to where she hit me in the pedestrian crosswalk because there were so many witnesses. And she probably wanted to get that. That's what I think.
yeah.
And then I think the third time she probably just wanted to get off me. But again, we've never heard from her.
How weird. She didn't give
And
And
you
you know,
assistance? She didn't
and
give
I can understand the theme when you're saying, because there is a lot of power in apology. And
yeah.
it's not about saying I'm sorry, it's about saying I was wrong.
Or,
There's a big difference. When
and
you're
just about
wrong,
showing that human, like even if she couldn't say the words, I'm sorry, like a look, a touch of the hand, something that says, I'm a human that has
Oh,
hurt you and I didn't mean to.
was she very young? Do you know anything about it?
She was 62.
Oh, I wonder if she was like, we hear a lot of stories in the 12-step program about alcoholism and driving, you know. So
that,
we
or at
never
this
know.
age, I mean, at that age too, you also start having your dementia and Alzheimer's signs and all of that. So,
Yeah, I don't know that it was any of that. Somebody says they saw her on the phone, and that
mm,
might explain the first time she hit me.
Right.
But the running over and I don't know if it was bad judgment, if it was, her trying to get away from me, like get away from the scene. I don't know. But I do know that, when we hurt somebody, just show
Wow.
you care that you hurt them.
well, you know what? As I'm listening to your story, it sounds to me like you've taken positive aspects from a very dark night of the soul, if you will, where you were at. And I saw some of your pictures as I was scouting through some things. And you were almost like unrecognizable
Yeah,
with
I
the
was.
amount of trauma that you experienced. So I guess my question becomes to you, do you feel that you were saved in that situation for a purpose? Is this your purpose?
That's what all the nurses and the doctors, they were saying, you were saved for a reason, you have to pay it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you
you know
believe
what?
that?
I don't know. I don't put that uh I don't know if it's pressure or regard on my wisdom. I don't feel like I'm an enlightened person. I feel like I've learned something and I want to share it. And I found that sharing it has helped a lot more people than I realized it would.
Mm,
Yes.
Especially when I talk about my traumatic brain injury. And one of the things, and then you alluded to this, Darlene, I am not the person that I used to be. I have a
mhm.
traumatic brain injury. I don't think like I did before.
In what ways?
I can't juggle chaos is one of the biggest ways. I was a master of 100 things at all times. I can't do that anymore. You know, I can't fill out forms anymore. It stresses me. I don't know why, but I can't, like, it scares me to fill out a form. I can't listen to voicemails. You know, there are things I can't have music on more than one speaker. I can't be in a, my husband and I went to concerts all the time. I can't do that. I can't be in crowded places. Like, I'm triggered by all of those. You know, there are sensory changes and mental changes. And, obviously I have panic attacks and, PTSD sometimes crossing the street.
Mm.
But, I learned not to consider myself, and all of this is a journey, but I learned not to consider myself less than because I've changed.
Yes.
Mm.
That
Excellent.
lesson I found, other people that have gone through, traumatic brain injuries have said is one of the things that's been, most valuable for them when they've read the book is they realize even though they're not going to be the person they were before, that's okay. I don't have to be. And that doesn't make them less than.
Do
That's
you feel
acceptance.
do
Accepting.
you feel that do you feel that through this journey that you have been able to connect with more people at a deeper level than before the accident?
100%. In
Mhm.
fact, after the accident, somebody said to me, "You were an unsympathetic character." Meaning,
Really?
yeah, she said, I really didn't like you very much. You were an unsympathetic character because I worked hard to look like I juggled it all and made it look easy. I
Yeah.
was, morning pickup with my kids or drop off. I was fully dressed. I had worked out, then I went to work, and then I was home for them. Like, I really was juggling a lot. And I wasn't asking for help. I mean, I had, babysitters and things like that. But, I guess I did it with, in such a way that I created a distance with other people.
A lot of
And
women
I
do that.
realized that probably is such a, is such a problem that social media exacerbates too. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize, that just that facade could create such a chasm in my relationships.
I have another question for you, Naseem. So there's a saying that says a tragedy can either make you bitter or better. And obviously, this has made you better. And so, how do you think that you have do you have a fork? You're at a fork in the road. Bitter, better. How did you choose better over bitter? Because so many people become bitter.
Well, I think there are a couple things. Before the accident, I've been in sales and technology sales for, probably 20 years at that point. Sales is full of rejection. So
Yeah.
every year you go to a sales conference and they have somebody inspirational saying, "Well, I've been through this horrible thing and, I came out better." And I think, I had an inventory of stories to know that it's possible.
Okay.
You can go through something hard and come out better. And I would say to myself, gosh, if that happened to me, I hope I could be that strong. And it wasn't easy, but I knew it was possible. So I think, that foundation helped me. Before the accident, I'd actually taken a course around growth mindset with Michael Gervais. And, that also taught me, and I didn't realize this actually for a few years, but just to think about the incremental wins. So if I looked at, if I wanted to go from, where I was unrecognizable to back to me, I'd still be waiting. But if I can go from unrecognizable to, today I pick up a coffee cup, tomorrow I walk up the stairs and celebrate, the forward progress, then I see that I'm making progress. And then, like the energy we talked about, then my kids can feel like we're making progress. And that creates a momentum of, what? Tomorrow it'll just be a little better than today.
Yeah.
And that almost, it's hard to get yourself bitter when you're feeling excited about little wins.
I
Yeah.
see you doing a TED Talk and being on the stage because I feel that your message is really important. I often go straight to a spiritual solution because I've had some absolute results in the tangible universe of changing my thinking to higher thoughts. which is to send love to people that I'm angry at, to forgive assholes. And it actually has healed my body. When I regret the past too much, I get back pain when I
Wow.
look back too much. And I found these metaphysical ideas change the universe around me. Like enthusiasm and courage actually change your brain waves, which change the atmosphere around you, like you said earlier. So what do you have any spiritual path that
You
you
know,
follow?
I just believe in living, just be a good person and live a good life. I grew up Muslim. My husband grew up Christian. We actually sent our kids to Jewish preschool. And we've always just had this belief. We don't really have it. We don't have a religion in our life. We just believe that if we're good people and we do good things, it's enough. I used to actually argue with my dad when I was young, and he would, say you have to believe and do these things. And I would say, Dad, why does God really care whether or not, I say I'm this if I live a good life and do good things?
Yeah.
And that's all I want to do, and I want my kids, and I tell my kids, different people have different cool guys, different spiritual leaders, but it's all at the core about being good people and doing good. So that's the sort of spiritual philosophy, and like it's like karma,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I think about. But what you were saying just now about the energy and the back pain, I think that you're really right. It's about that's your it's a, when you forgive people and you let go of the bitterness, it's not only a gift to them, it's a gift to yourself.
Yes. Mainly to yourself because
Mainly to
when you
yourself.
present somebody, you're drinking the poison. You're marrying yourself to them or chaining yourself with a ball and a chain. You're their prisoner because you're thinking about them all day long and grumbling
Mhm.
and griping.
So when the accident and when traumas happen, as you guys probably know, you have some expectation of how you think people will show up for you. And sometimes people don't show up the way you think they would. They should have. So what I've done with that and what I've realized, through my trauma is that we have no idea what people are going through. We have no
Mhm.
idea what triggers them. Maybe seeing me all battered and cut up, you know, and unrecognizable is something they couldn't handle, not because they didn't love me or care about me, but I don't know what their I don't know what all their stories and dimensions are. And I've decided that even if they didn't show up for me in that moment the way I had thought they might, it doesn't mean there was a failing in our friendship. I'm
Yeah.
going to still appreciate all the moments we had together, like the fun times, and just let those, and not discount any of that past because of this one moment and what they may or may not have done.
That is
And it's
big.
a
And
kindness to
I want to share a story. You're bringing something up that's taking me back. But, when you're talking about certain people that didn't show up for you, and I have just learned throughout my career, throughout my spiritual journey, through all of it, that the bottom line when it comes out is fear. I mean, there's many emotions on top of fear, such as anger or whatever else people can spew out there. But the bottom line is fear. And I had an experience when I was in my early 20s. There was about five of us that ran around together, and one of my friends was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of like 24. And that was so, we were just having babies. It was so scary to me. I was fearful. And then when she did the chemo and lost her hair, I all the other friends came around her and supported her and was with her. I couldn't see her. It just I couldn't. There was something, it just frightened me, right? And it took probably 20 years, and we remained friends. Our kids grew before I finally sat down and apologized to her for my actions 20 years ago, because I did not realize that I was so afraid I was going to catch it. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but it was like, and so, but once we sit down and talked about it, we hugged, and she's like, I know that you loved me. I know that you were scared to death. But to not show up for somebody in that position was probably really difficult for her that day, just like it was for you. But like I said, all of my experiences
Luckily,
have
she didn't
been
judge you on just that
huge.
moment, though, and you were able
No,
to recover.
no, I would no. And so we have, and here's the oddest thing. So with that particular girl, so we got back reconnected. I did my apologies. I met, my amends. We got back together. And then her son needed me. Her son needed me as a medical professional, and I was able to show up. And her and her husband both sat at my dining room table and said, "We don't know where we'd be without you." Well, I just laughed and said, "It's a good thing it wasn't 20 some years ago because you'd be out of luck." But so anyway, so all of these people that maybe you kind of wonder where they were and why they didn't show up, my guess is eventually, Naseem, they're going to be coming back to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and people have to protect themselves too.
It's my
mhm.
self-forgetting. I love that line where letting go of selfishness actually expanded my universe when I stopped thinking about myself so much. All my problems are a result of thinking about myself too much. I mean, really, I had to learn that, and become less fearful of people's opinions. We all come from, I don't know, as women, a lot of us had what you had as a child. We were afraid of being judged, not being pretty. I was told I wasn't perfect unless my hair was perfect from a very Texas mother. And I'm like, I'm an inventor, I'm an astronaut, I'm an explorer. Oh, I got to be pretty. Darn it. And I still have to do this, stuff. One day we'll let go of it, I hope.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I'm a little torn on it. I'm 54. I'll share I'm dyeing my hair. You know,
You look great, but
Still get on the scale. And it's, I want to still, I'm okay with still caring as long as there's a balance, as long as I have my self-worth coming from a variety of sources. I think where we lose the perspective is when we tie it all to one dimension.
exactly. May I ask you a question about um 9/11 today, which is interesting. Are you happier today? Do you feel that this was a blessing, or when I say a blessing, I mean a
The accident?
ultimately, yes, the whole thing is better for your life.
Yeah, I did I was doing an exercise where the teacher had said put all of your major life events on a trajectory, on a like a map out all your major life events and put the positive ones at the top and the negative ones at the bottom. And the accident went at the top.
Wow.
I know. And when I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, it was hard. It was hard on my family. It was hard on my kids. But I think we've all grown so much from it that life is more fulfilling and richer. And I think we all can grow from these tough moments. And not doesn't mean those tough moments are any less tough. Both my parents died a few years ago, and then 3 weeks of each other. It was very traumatic. It's always going to be horrible. But are there things that I can appreciate as I think about it? The way it happened, what happened, how I've grown from that moment? Yes.
Yeah.
We have to give ourselves the courage and the opportunity to talk about it, to
You have
acknowledge them.
you have a spirit that's really unbreakable, I have to say. Because your positive attitude, and a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do what you've done. So you're gifted in some way. Maybe it's something you weren't aware of then. I keep wondering, why did I make it through so many hard? My biggest gift to me is my sobriety and I'm glad that happened, that terrible day, which was really catastrophic. But you know what? It helped other people. It helped more people. And then my universe grew, expanded, and more love was brought into my life. So whatever you have going for you, it's an absolute beautiful gift, and you're radiant. You're giving
Mhm.
it back. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Naseem. Now, what's next on your agenda? And can you give us a few of those sermons at the end, those 10?
Oh,
Do you remember them?
I'll show you. So here's the book.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Nice.
All right, let
Thank
me
you.
see. Actually, I start each um, uh, I also just start each chapter with favorite quotes too, but I'll read you lesson number 5, or I'll tell you lesson number 5 is don't ask, just tell. And what I mean there is going back to just letting people know how much we care and how we feel, and sharing and being and showing up. One of the things we talked about how hard it is to show up for somebody. And I look at that in 2 ways, and this lesson is sort of multifaceted. And it's about, showing you care, but then also, when somebody's in trauma, recognizing that they may not be able to communicate with you in that moment. And just by showing up for them and not asking them questions like, how are you? Was a really hard question when I was going through this, because I didn't want to be a downer and say, well, I'm not great. And I didn't want to lie and then feel like I wasn't being genuine. So, just showing up and say you care.
I love that. That is so beautiful. That's actually, if everyone did that, imagine how charitable our society would be and how loving it would be. Just, oh, Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you brought up one of the things he talked about was that if you're in line, a long line, and there's people ahead of you that are dropping things and they're taking too much time and you're in a hurry, if you were to just think, maybe they're going through a hard day, maybe their mother just lost their life, these kids lost their mother that day. And just have that charitable thought, your intention about that can change your feeling in that line, your anger toward people. It can stop a fight.
Yeah. You know what? That is a great point. I think people don't realize how much those small acts of kindness help other people. Whether it's holding the door and smiling, or, when someone in line just asks, it's making small talk. So many people, or not, I shouldn't say so many people, but sometimes you see people just answering a question and looking back at their phone, not recognizing that they need some engagement, and that you can give them an extra minute and it might be really what they need.
Exactly. Gosh.
I went through a time, actually, this was like 10 years ago. I was at a job that just wasn't feeling great. I was feeling lonely, and I found that like when I was out, I was just constantly talking to strangers because I just needed some connection, which, unfortunately, like when I sat on a bus and talked to the person next to me, I think they found it a little sketch. But sometimes you just need, you need connection.
We all need connection. And as a last tiny thing, we're running out of time, but I just want to say that I behaved like the biggest jerk one day when I was late running into a grocery store to grab an item on Christmas Eve. They were closing and I needed to get home. And the woman in front of me had 90 items. I've told this story before, but it's just telling on myself. And I was fuming that I didn't even ask her, may I go ahead of you? I preferred to stand behind her back and fume and huff and puff. And I even made a fake phone call to my mother had dementia at the time and was in the hospital. I made a fake phone call going, Mom, I know you're in the hospital, but I can't get out of this long line. And then I did this so the woman would hear me.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the back of her head and she was shaking with Parkinson's. And I immediately poured waves of love out to the back of her head. I was so ashamed. No one knew what I was doing. I was like, and suddenly she turned around and said, Oh, honey, you only have one item. Go ahead of me. And it was like clockwork. When I catch myself on being a jerk, I'm hoisted on my own petard. That's an old Australian expression. But
You bring up something good is that we always have to work at it. I went through this experience. I always say I'm not enlightened. I have some tattoos to remind myself. I wrote down my lessons to remind myself because I don't wake up with all this wisdom. I don't just live, like I'm this really smart person now. I still have to work at being everything I want to be.
sharing it is the beginning of, the more you share, the more you help others. And it's fun. And the
Yeah.
laughter, we need to laugh even when we're going through trauma. I think it's important. I think laughter comes from a higher source. I
I
don't
think
know.
it helps heal. I
Yeah.
think that laughter helps heal. One last thing before we leave, and you've said so many good things, and one of the things I thought about was back in 1952, Norman Vincent Peale wrote a book, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called The Power of Positive Thinking. and how it actually changes. And the study I did at the University of Alabama for my doctorate actually was proof that positive affirmations, positive things that you think about, changes the chemical physical body.
Really?
So it is so interconnected. Spirituality and physical being are so connected. And it sounds like you are on your journey, Naseem, and I wish you well as you continue to promote your book. I hope that goes well for you. I want to get it and read it because I
Oh,
find your story fascinating.
We're both
And
today.
just so honored that you could come on today and share with us.
oh, thank you. It's so nice to meet you guys. And Lydia, I'm glad I got to be here for your special day.
Thank you. Yes. And can you tell us where we can reach you? Is there a website or
Yo, so you can find me at naseemrochette.com or lifeunbreakable.com, which is easier to spell than Naseem. And if you want the book, The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over, it's on Amazon, or you can probably order it wherever books are sold. But you can get the Audible, and it's me reading or narrating, or paperback, Kindle, whatever.
perfect? Okay, great.
Thank you.
So we're going to have all that information on the YouTube channel and on all of our Apple, iHeart, Spotify. We're all over the place.
And I always forget to say this, but if you read the book and you like it, will you leave me a review? I was an independent publisher.
Yes,
Very
definitely.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Naseem. Naseem Rochette. Unbreakable, the unexpected benefits of being run over. It was such a great joy having you today, and thank you so much.
Thank you.